Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about one of the most powerful features in Figma, that is auto layout. If you have ever struggled with aligning elements, keeping consistent spacing, or making your design adjust automatically as you add content or element inside your frame, then you have a feature inside Figma that is auto layout. Now, what exactly auto layout is? Well, auto layout is basically let your design behave responsive in nature, flexible, and super easy to manage. Now, what we are going to learn in this video is a basic about auto layout, then resizing minimum and maximum values, and then alignment, spacing, and padding, and then absolute positions. So, without wasting time, we are going to jump into the Figma, and then we'll try to understand what are the different properties inside auto layout and how we can actually make our design more responsive and flexible. So, I have few basic form of structure with which we are going to learn about auto layouts. Now, the first is parent frame with one element, where this element is just a frame without any auto layout. But your parent frame have auto layout in it. And then second is a parent frame with two elements. And then you have like parent frame with one element, but now the element inside it also have auto layout property, where in the first we didn't have. Now the second is a parent frame with two elements, and the both elements have auto layout property. The third is a parent frame with two elements, where one element have absolute positioning and the second element have just an auto layout inside it. So with the help of these 5 frames, we are going to understand what exactly auto layout is, how we can apply, how we can use auto layout, and make responsive design and beautiful designs. What are the common parameters in the 5 frames are? Well, all the 5 frames have auto layout structure. So I'm going to give you what's the basically auto layout UI looks like, and then what are the different properties in it, and then how you can actually use inside your design. So your so whenever you just apply an auto layout, for example, let's say you have this and this have auto layout. So I'm going to remove the auto layout, and then you have a frame inside a frame, right? So your frame is the parent frame, and this is basically an element, right? Now, if I want to apply an auto layout, so there are two ways, right? One is you can just click this and this icon and this. So when you just click on this icon, this basically going to apply an auto layout to the parent frame. It's automatically align an auto layout, and then it just automatically sets some values or padding, right? So this blue region is basically an padding regions, and this is your element. Now, this is just a one way, but then if you want to use a shortcut, you can actually just hit Shift plus A on your keyboard, and then it just applies our auto layout in it. See, I just press Shift plus A, and it's applied auto layout to the parent frame. So this blue region, as you know, this is your padding areas, and then you will also have a gap, which is this. What you will see when you have just a single element, you won't be able to see a gap basically. But when you have two elements, you can actually define your gap between the elements, right? So now you learned how to apply auto layout. Now we are going to talk about the structures and UI of auto layout, right? Now, so the all 5 frames have auto layout in it, and then if you see, this is basically an auto layout structures and UI, you can say. So now the first thing first, when you apply then applies auto layout, you will see this this thing where this is like a free form, your initial without an auto layout, and then this once you apply auto layout, you'll have like a vertical alignment. Now basically what exactly the vertical alignment is. So let's say you have your parent frame, and inside that you have like 1, 2, 3, or maybe more than that elements inside it, right? And then you want to those element stack vertically, then you have like a vertical alignment. But if you want your element to stack horizontally, then you have a horizontal layout, and then if you want your element have some grid kind of structure, you have grid. But there's one more thing. If you are using a vertical layout, you won't have a wrap property, right? Because your phone or your desktop or your tablet have a scroll feature, right? So in that scenarios, you don't need a wrap. But if you're using a horizontal layout, in that scenarios, you have a wrap functionality or like a wrap feature, which will basically, if your content or if your element is overflowing from its main frame or parent frame, you can apply a wrap feature that will basically wrap the content or wrap the element inside the main or parent frame, right? So I'll also explain this with a live example as well. But yeah, I hope you understand what are the different layout structures here is. So now I'm going to put a basic one frame, and inside that I'm going to just put one more frame inside it, and then I'm going to just give some fill color to it. Let's say I have this, right? Now if you see, this frame 6 didn't have any auto layout, right? So I'm going to give an auto layout into it, and then it has some auto layouts format. Now if you see this element is basically stacked vertically. I'm going to add one more element, so I'll just duplicate this with the help of Command plus D if you're using Mac, and if you're using Windows, then you can just actually press Control D. In that scenario, just duplicate. Now this element has the both elements are stacked vertically, right? Here you can see, but I want this element to be stacked horizontally, so I'll just turn on my horizontal, and then if I see this have a wrap feature, right? Enable it. Now so I can just put this, and I'm going to put this from fill to fixed. So basically fixed is basically going to fix your width of element, right? So irrespective of your frame size, there's going to have some, like have a fixed width. So this won't change its width, right? Now, what happened here? If I try to use the size of my parent frame, this will go down because this have a wrap feature. Because the both element have a fixed width, right? So they can't adjust themselves. So these two element inside the frame, they'll try to uh, stack below, right? Now, if I just resize this, see, as my frame 6 has reduced in terms of width, and the both elements have fixed width, so they can't adjust, so they will just stack below that because they have a wrap feature. And if I stack this, see, just stack again horizontally, right? So that's the power of like horizontal plus wrap. Now we have like a different properties when we talk about like width and then height, right? So we are going to talk about that as well. So probably you understood this auto layout structuring and all, like in layout structure. Now I'm going to talk about a width and height of a parent frame and then element, right? So there are basically two different things when you're using an element without auto layout and with layout. So they have some different properties you're going to see where the parent frame have auto layout and this element didn't have. In the second scenario, you have your parent frame with auto layout plus your element also have auto layout structure. Now, firstly, I'm going to talk about this without auto layout. So your parent frame have auto layout, but element didn't have. So in that scenario, basically, if you see this, you have your fixed and hug. Now, what is fixed and what is hug? So basically, fixed is like, let's say you want your frame to have some certain width or certain height, then you have fixed. But in some scenarios, you might need your element or like your parent frame flexible in nature. So in that case, now what exactly the flexible in nature means? Let's say you have one bottle, for instance, for example, like you have this bottle, right? Now this bottle, as you fill the water, this bottle is going to resize. So let's say you have filled water till here, then this bottle size is going to shrink till here, so that it always have a fill structure. But in cases of like this is basically is a hug nature of your parent element. But in some cases, let's say level of the water, like as you just start filling up, so it will just start expanding because the bottle size basically dependent on the element inside it, right? So now what exactly going to happen is if I'm going to make from fixed to hug, now independent of this element size, fixed is going to stay intact. But now if you just switch to hug, in that scenario, your parent frame is just going to resize itself. So when you just switch from fixed to hug, this will basically going to adjust itself, like the parent frame going to adjust itself based on the inside element size. So basically in hug scenarios, basically your parent frame size is dependent on your element size. Now, yep, see this. I change of width from fixed to hug, and the parent frame is just shrink itself and adjust it in such a way that that this will look like have a fill structure. And same goes for height. From fixed to hug, see, adjust it again. Now, why the left, and I mean, why the white space is still left there? Because they have the padding, right? And if I just remove the padding, it's also going to shrink again, see? Now, the parent frame didn't have any padding, so based on the inside element size, it just resizes itself. Now, if I try to add some padding, remember, your inside element size is not changing, right? The only thing is changing your parent frame sizes, right? In hug scenarios. So as I have added padding, you can see there's a white space, right? Okay, so that is when you're using hug or fixed. So now in this scenario, basically we have element. Now here the element also have an auto layout structure. So and now if you see the property of like width and height have a hug property, right? So in that scenario, if you try to put some element inside the element one frame, well, like this is also a frame. So basically you can't apply auto layout to any shape or like vector element. You can only apply auto layout structure to a frame, right? Always remember. Now, this is also a frame. So this have like a hug and hug structure, right? So initially there is no content. So whatever initially you're going to have your border size, like see the border is empty, right? There is nothing. Now, if initially you have decided to make a border of this size, in that scenario, this border is going to have intact till this size. But as you start pouring an element inside it or like filling a water inside it, this is going to resize, right? Because this have a hug and hug property. So same thing is here. Now, if you try to put this element inside the element one, where the element one have like hug and hug property, this is going to shrink or this is going to resize. So, well, based on this element size, right? So now I'm going to see, or yeah, and also see, there is no padding at all, right? So I'm also going to add some padding into it. And the element or the rectangle, I'm going to paste inside it. Now, what happened here is, I'm going to just go back and show it to you what happened exactly. So I've added a padding, right? So that you can actually, evaluate if I'm adding element inside it, it's just going to resize, and then you will able to understand, okay, what happened is, this is your element one, like this is your element one, and inside this, I'm going to fill some water, right? So my element or like my rectangle is basically in water. And based on that, this border is going to resize, right? So based on that, this element is going to resize, right? Because they have, it have hug and hug property. So I'm going to just paste my element inside it or like my rectangle inside it, and you see the element one is just resize itself. Why so? Because of the hug properties, right? Now, if you see, there is some sort of like one more properties there, which is fill container. Now, what the fill container is? So, fill container is basically uh, let your element have always fill in nature. So, it means your parent frame always have a fixed size, right? If I'm going to give and hug, so it basically resize. But if I'm going to have a like fixed height and width, in that case, if I give a fill property to my element, basically your bottle size is fixed. Now, if you try to put some water, this water is basically going to expand and fill the bottle in such way that there's no space left until and unless you're giving any padding, right? So here, if you see, like I've given a padding of like 32, this is your left and right padding, and this is your top and bottom padding. So this frame have like left and right padding of 32 pixels and top and bottom of 64 pixels. Now, if I try to give and fill property to my this element, what will happen is this is going to just fill. Now, if you see the red line, you see the red line here, which appears, which is basically saying now this element has some white space left from left and right hand side. So this is going to stretch itself and fill until the parent frame, right? So now you see. So what happened here is it just left a 32 pixel from left and right side. What happened here is this is your bottle. Now the parent frame has fixed size, so you have entered like you have filled the water in this bottle, and as you're filling the water inside the bottle, what is happening here is your water is expanding in such way that your bottle feels like you have fully filled water inside it, right? Now here I didn't have given a fill property to my height, so that is why this is like a hug property. And if I give like a fill, then it's also going to just adjust itself like a stretch, going to like it will just stretch from top and bottom to appear in a fill manner. Now see, so this is basically expanded from top and bottom so that it can fill your parent frame, right? That is a fill, and that is a hug property. Now also, when you will get the fill property, so if you have your parent frame and this parent frame, like the bottom, now the bottom have like a auto layout structure, and inside the element also have an auto layout, then only you'll able to see the fill property. But in some cases, like you're using this, where your bottle have auto layout, but your element inside it, like the bottle didn't have any auto layout, in that scenario, you won't be able to see any fill property. Now we have understood what exactly the fill, and I mean, we have talked about width and height. So now we are going to understand what is this. This is like an alignment, right? So now we'll try to understand with two examples, because that will be more easy for us to understand, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more frame, and I'm going to put two elements inside it, so that okay, yep. So there's two things. Well, I'll explain later. But now, for example, we have this, right? Now, as we have this structure where frame 6 have like auto layout, and then we have two element. But if you see, the padding is automatically adjusted in such way that this some fill property in it. So whatever happened here is automatically made by Figma. But now we are going to change some of the properties. Like we are going to give a bottom, left and right padding of like 24. Now this have like a fill, that is why they have just stretched itself. But if you see, the height is fixed, so there won't be change if I changing my padding. And I'm going to have like the same 24 from top and bottom. So it just itself, because this have a hug property. What I'm going to do is like I'm going to just stretch, so that will change from hug to fixed, right? Now if you see, there's one more thing, which is this. This is your gap basically between the elements. Now you will always only able to see this gap when you have more than one element, right? You will, well, I mean, initially, or like irrespective of like one or two elements, you will see, but like basically the functionality only works when you have more than one element, right? So in this case, let's say this have like a 4 pixel of gap, but this is not working, right? Because there is no two elements or like more than one element, right? So like how you can say like there is gap between the element, right? This is basically a gap between the elements, and there is only one element, then it just says 4, but there's no impact. Even if you like make it 200, there's no impact, right? Because there is just only one element. But in this case, if you try to increase your gap between the elements, the magics happen. Now I'm going to adjust a gap to 24 as well, and I'm going to resize it till here. Now there are 9 different alignments you can see here, right? This is basically help your element or like help your parent frame have some alignment of your elements inside the parent frame, right? So basically, let's say if you have one element inside the parent frame, and then if you're seeing this, where this have like a top left alignment, so in that scenario, basically your element is going to stick at the top left, right? But as you have so much white space, and your element can actually move around in this white space, so in that case, you can actually, with the help of alignment, you can actually pick the alignment how you want your alignment to be. So it's more like a constraint where you have like left and top. So basically, if you stretch, there's nothing going to happen with the element, right? So what is happening here is you have say like your element should always stays top left, right? And then the second is like a top center. So if you just do that, what is going to happen is like your element is going to shift into the center, right? So now if you try to pull, what will happen is your, let's say, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line here, and this is your basically, now if you see, this line is basically the center of your frame 6, right? So, well, this line is basically going to be a center of your, parent frame, like a frame 6. Now, if you see this line, right, this line is basically separating this frame 6 in two equal section, right? And also dividing this element in equal part, right? Now, what will happen? Like this have like a fixed width, so it's just going to have say the size is not, there's no impact on size, right? Because this element have fixed properties, right, in terms of width and height, right? Now if I try to pull this, what will happen is this also going to pull or like shift towards right if I'm stretching my frame 6 from right hand side, right? So I'm going to just stretch my parent frame from right hand side, so the element inside it, which is like at the top center, is also going to stretch towards like shift towards the right hand side, right? Now if you see this. Now what happened here is, if I just go into the center, and if you can see, there is always an equal separation on both the sides, right? So that is basically your center, top center, right? And then it just works similarly in like if you just align your component or like element in center and center and center and bottom, right? Now you also have like a bottom left, then bottom center, and then right center, and then bottom right. So basically you have this 9 different alignment, and based on your use case or like scenarios, you can actually pick what suits better for your use case, right? And then we are going to create some responsive and flexible design with the help of this feature now. So don't underestimate the power of this width and height. To be very frank, this is very, very helpful for your design to have some responsive in nature. Now, as you see, my element have like fixed in nature in terms of width and height. Now, if I try to make them a fill and fill, in that scenario, they will just try to fill in its parent frame, right? Yes, always remember excluding the paddings, right? So now, if I just if I just pick these 2 elements, and I have a fill width, like fill container of width, and then fill container of height of my elements. So they have just adjusted themselves, right? Basically, what happened here is they had just equally filled because there are 2 elements, right? So when you have just a one element, for example here, if I just duplicate this and then if I just delete this, what happened here is it just automatically stretched itself and filled the parent frame, right? Excluded the padding, always remember. And in this case, what happened is here is basically this both element have fill and fill property in nature. What they had done is they have equally divided themselves in terms of height, right? And why so? Because you have a vertical alignment, right? Now, if I just change from horizontal to vertical, they are going to stack horizontal, plus they are going to adjust their width, not height. Well, ideally they will adjust their height as well just to fill the container, right? So if I just change this from vertical to horizontal, you see this, they also have adjust their height plus width, right? Because the potentially what happened is here, the one element have to fill the width, or sorry, have to fill the height of the container, like the parent frame. So they have just itself and fill the height, and also they have equally divided in terms of width, just to stays in the frame, right? Now, because the frame have a fixed width, so like frame's width can't be changed, but like the frame in like the element inside it will have a flexible property, like a fill property. So if you try to add one more element inside the frame 6 or parent frame, they are also going to, they will also adjust themselves, right? Because they have a fill property, right? So I'm going to just duplicate my element, or like a rectangle 3. See? So the 3 rectangles have basically equally divided in terms of width, so that they can actually fill the parent frame plus also maintain the gaps between the elements, right? So that's the power, and that's how you can actually create a responsive design. See, they are all the time. If you're stretching your frame 6, because your frame 6 have a fixed in nature, your elements inside it are going to adjust themselves because they have a fill property, like a flexible property, right? See, they are going to change its width. So, and also, if you play with this, like your gap between the elements, they are also going to change its width as well. Now I'm going to increase, and if you going to focus on these rectangles, like these 3 rectangles, they are also going to reduce because my gap between the elements are increasing, right? See how they are basically reducing their sizes. Okay, so that's the power. Now, one more thing also what we can actually do is like, what's the wrap going to do here? Now, because we have a fill in nature, wrap won't work. Even if you apply wrap, there's no function. There's no visibility of wrap feature, right? Now, what happened here is, because they have the fill property, there's no point of adding wrap. If I say, I'm going to fix my width of my elements inside the parent frame, and if I try to resize, what is going to happen here is, and also, what I'm going to do is, I'm also going to give fixed height, so that, and my parent frame, I'm going to change my parent frame's height from fixed to hug, so that if this goes below, if I reduce my parent frame size, this will go below below the element. I have this in fixed properties, right? So if I try to resize my parent frame, they are going to adjust in such way that my parent frame uh, will be flexible in nature and will adjust itself, not the elements inside, right? Because my the parent frame height is hug and width is fixed, right? So I'm going to play with width so that you can understand. See, what happened here is, what happened here is this and this and this. Now, if you see the width of this, if it is 531, it can't be come inside until I make some enough space to stay, right? Now, as they have less space, it can't be set, this element can't be set in this space. So this will going to just shift in bottom, right? That's the power of like wrap. So think of like you are designing a mobile screen and then you have some elements which can't be overflow from your mobile width or from your parent frame. So in that scenarios, you might needed a wrap feature where basically if your content is overflowing, it will just stack below so that you always have visibility of your elements and won't losing responsiveness of your frame, right? So we have discussed this plus this plus one more thing. If you see, you have new gap also added, right? So as your element stacked below, you have horizontal gap and vertical gap as well, right? So you can also change your vertical gap as per your need or requirement, right? And same goes for a grid. So for example, if you have grid and then if you say, see, this is basically, so grid is basically some sort of like, if you have created like a 2 by 2, you can actually change how many you want, right? So in my case, like I'm using 2 by 2. Now, so you have your fixed height and fixed width always. So there's no hug and all that properties. Basically, your element or like your parent frame must have always a fixed property, fixed width and fixed height. And then the grid is basically going to have a equal separation or equal portion within its parent frame, right? Excluding the padding. Always remember, padding is just like giving extra space to your parent frame, so that whatever the element inside it have always some white space left from left behind. So that is all about the grid and all. You can also have, okay, yeah. So when you have this, you can actually have a fill property, which will basically fill in such manner so that it always have a equally divided. Now, if I'm going to talk about one more functionality in width and height, which is add minimum and maximum. So now we are going to talk about minimum and maximum width and minimum and maximum height. What exactly the minimum and maximum height or width is. So, well, in most of cases, you might want to design something which have some breakpoints in it, right? So your desktop have some your desktop have some different width, and then your tablet have some different width, and then your mobile have some different width, right? So the minimum width for your mobile is 320 pixel, and it can go up to, let's say, 799 pixel. So you have defined a minimum and maximum width, right? Well, to be very frank, you don't need a height because you always have like a scroll feature inside it, so you don't need to design. But yeah, if you are designing something, let's say in your parent frame, you have some element, that element can have some maximum height and width based on your responsiveness, right? So if uh, for example, I'm going to delete this and I'm going to pull this, right? Okay, for example, this didn't have any maximum and minimum width. So we'll try to understand lighting now. So let's say I'm going to define a minimum width for this for this frame 6 or for my parent frame. Let's say I'm going to say like 400 can be a minimum width for my frame 6 or for my parent frame, and also we'll have a maximum width of, let's say, like 1200 pixels. So it can only exceed up to 1200 pixel. It can't go beyond because I've set a limit for my parent frame, right? And you also wonder like why this is stretching, because this have a fill property. So, and also if I try to shrink or if I try to reduce my parent frame size, it won't go below 400 pixels, because I have said like 400 is a minimum pixel it can reduce up to, and 1200 is a maximum pixel it can go up, right? So that is basically some sort of like minimum and maximum width help. And similarly in the height as well. So you can actually define a minimum height and maximum height for your frame, and you can say like my minimum height can reduce up to 200 pixel, and my height of my the height of my parent frame can go up to 400 or 600, right? So if you define that, then your parent frame can only go up to whatever you define your maximum height or maximum width, and similarly for minimum. So we have understood what's the basics of auto layout, what is minimum and maximum and resizing, and what is spacing between the elements, what is padding and all that, right? Now what we are going to do, we are just going to play with it, and we are going to try with the absolute position, right? So for example, I'm going to keep this one, and here if you see this element or this rectangle have just stacked vertically, right? But this is something is like stacking vertically. So okay, now we are going to apply an absolute position to this element. Now absolute position, think of this like you have three-dimensional axis, right? So now let's say you have your plane like xy plane and then z axis. So if you see here, you have like three-dimensional space, right? You see here, right? So for example, this is your x or this is your y axis, this is your x-axis and this is your z-axis, right? Now I'm talking about this plane, right? So this is your x and y plane, right? Now think of like your element is basically lying in 2D, two-dimensional plane, right? This is your basically your frame 6 is basically lying in a 2D plane, right? And these two elements are basically lies in that in the inside the plane, right? Now if I just add an absolute position, it means this element or like this rectangle, it just comes out and exceed into this z-axis, right? So this is your z-axis, right? And this is your x-axis, y-axis and x-axis, right? So your frame 6 or your parent frame is basically lies here, and inside that your two elements are lying, right? So this is your like rectangle 3 and rectangle 3, they both are basically lying in this plane, right? But now if I give an absolute position to my one rectangle, there is like z-axis in the scenario. So basically what happened here is, now your this rectangle, rectangle 6 is basically comes out and exceed in the z index, right? So basically now you have a z index property as you apply your absolute position. So see what happened here is, where you can see now this have a constraint property, unlike unlike an auto layout, right? What happened here is, now this have a constraint instead of auto layout structuring, because this is free to move anywhere irrespective of your whatever the property you have set to your parent frame. It just got free from it, right? Now it can actually move around, and you can actually, let's say I'm going to put this here, and then I'm going to set some constraint into it, let's say like here and here, like right and bottom. And then if I try to stretch this element is always going to stay at its place. See, so that is something like it just got free from what are the properties I've given, like what are the auto layout properties your parent frame have, and it have its own individual properties. Now, so you might be using this in some scenarios where you will be designing some card, and then you have some illustration which is like inside your frame or inside your parent component, and you want that illustration or element to have some free form, so that like a free in terms of like a position, right? So you can also have like a scale property to it. So based on that, it will just going to scale as well. So if I just try to reduce or increase the size, this is also going to increase. See, right? So I'm assuming that you guys have watched my constraint video. If not, then please go and check out. That will basically help you to understand the constraint, and then you'll be able to understand what the scale property or the left, right, and all that properties, and how you can actually use inside your auto layout as well. So one thing is that, and now as it's freeform, there's one more property is also unlocked for your parent frame, which is this. Now this is auto layout setting. So you see this, like the canvas stacking. So basically canvas stacking is basically this your rectangle 3 and rectangle 3. I mean, these two elements are basically nothing but a canvas, and they are basically lying in such way that if you have your property like last on top, it means whatever the last element is going to be always appears at the top, right? And you can also change it to first and top. Well, now what exactly happened here is, I'm going to just change the color and show you what exactly happened here. So this have like if you see here, the stacking in such way that your this like the absolute positions element is below the rectangle 3, or like below this element, right? It means, and this have a property of like first on top. It means this property is basically above your absolute positions element. It means if I try to reduce or like resize in this way, you see this element is appearing at the top of this, right? And if I try to change from first on top to last on top, this element is going to comes up or like appears top of this element, right? So now you have understood what exactly the last on top and first on top is. Now you're going to talk about the strokes, right? Now if you see this, right, I'm going to just remove the absolute position of this element so that we can actually understand what the stroke like what's the auto layout setting, what's the stroke auto layout setting have exclude and include property, right? So for example, we have this element, right? We have these two elements, and I'm going to say like I'm going to just give a stroke to it. For example, I have given a stroke like 3. Okay, now if you see this, I have given a stroke to my elements and have outside strokes, right? Now if you see here, these strokes are not included in the auto layout, right? Because I have set my auto layout setting have excluded stroke. Because of that, it's not including the strokes of my elements, right? Now if I just change from excluded to included, you see, now it's considering and strokes as well as a part of this auto layout settings, right? You might be using very frequently, you might be using this very often, but yeah, this is also one sort of feature for your auto layout settings. Now, we have talked about this, and then you also have this where you can actually change individual padding of your auto layout, right? So we have understood all about auto layout, how we can actually use auto layout with element have auto layout, and with element which didn't have auto layout, right? So I hope you have learned a lot about auto layout and all. I will suggest you to go and practice auto layout so that you can understand better and clear about auto layout and all, and then you'll be able to create your flexible and responsive design. By that, I'm going to say bye-bye, take care, and have fun. Stay healthy, keep learning. Bye-bye.